6 successful men, 1 airplane, a single accusation. Within 2 hours, a soldier would lose his last chance to say goodbye to his dying father. A 19-year-old genius would watch his scholarship vanish. A teacher's dream program would die. A CEO's keynote speech would be given by someone else. None of them had committed a crime. None of them had broken a rule. Their only mistake, they were all black, and they were all sitting in business class. This is the true cost of 2 words: you people. This is Flight 3284. A polite ding chimed through the quiet, pressurized airplane cabin. "Sir?" A flight attendant's tight, artificially sweet voice said. "Sir, I'm speaking to you." "A man," Marcus answered calmly, his voice deep. "I'm listening. Is there a problem?" The flight attendant, Brenda, forced a smile. You can't sit here. This seat is taken." Marcus's voice remained level. "I'm in 1A. My boarding pass says 1A. This is 1A, so I am the one taking it." Brenda's smile vanished. "Sir, I've checked my manifest. Seat 1A is for passenger M. Williams. That seat is in business class." "I am Marcus Williams," Marcus said, "and this is business class." The attendant let out a short, sharp sigh and leaned in. "Look, I don't know what kind of mix-up has happened, but your ticket, well, passengers from economy are not permitted to be in this cabin. I'm going to have to ask you to take your belongings and go back to your actual seat." Marcus's calm was gone, replaced by a cold precision. "My actual seat is 1A, which I paid for with my money. Here is my boarding pass, and here is my receipt. Look at it." There was a beat of silence. Brenda's voice dropped, its sweetness gone, replaced by a sharp, ugly tone. "I don't need to see that. I need you to move. Now, we have other passengers boarding." "I am not moving from the seat I paid for," Marcus stated. "Get your manager." "Sir, I'm not going to ask you again," Brenda snapped. "I don't know how you people managed to get up here, but this cabin is for paying customers, and I will have you removed if you continue to be disruptive." "You people." The words hung in the pressurized air. The other passengers were now listening. From a few rows back, another voice, deep and with authority, cut through. "Ma'am, what did you just say to him?" Brenda, startled, spun around. "Sir, this is a private—" "I'm Major David Reynolds, United States Air Force," the man said. "And I asked you a question. What did you mean by you people?" From across the aisle, another voice, this one rich, older, and angry. "I heard it too. We all did. You just accused this man of not belonging here." "I'm in 3B. I'm a keynote speaker. He's in his assigned seat. What is the actual problem?" Brenda, panicked now, her face flushing, stammered. "This passenger is being belligerent. He's refusing to—" Marcus cut her off. "I'm refusing to be downgraded to economy after I paid for a business class seat." 3 other men, who had been sitting quietly, now stood up. A teacher, a caregiver, a student. They didn't say anything. They just stood. 6 black men, all in the business class cabin, all watching her. Seeing them all standing, Brenda's panic turned to something else. She grabbed the intercom phone. "This is Brenda at the main cabin door. I need security, now. I have a group of men. They're being threatening. They're coordinating. I'm being threatened." The cabin door burst open. 2 armed airport security officers rushed in. "What's the problem here?" one officer yelled. Brenda, her hands shaking, pointed. "Them, all of them. They're refusing to sit down. They're disrupting the flight. They're a threat. You have to get them off. All 6 of them, off this plane. This is a story about a system and a spark. This is a story about 6 men, a consultant, a soldier, a businessman, a teacher, a student, a caregiver. They were not a group. They had never met. They were not friends or family or colleagues. They were just 6 strangers, 6 black men who had all, for their own reasons, booked a seat in business class on Flight 3284. The system saw them as a threat. The system saw them as one, as you people. A flight attendant named Brenda In a single moment of casual, venomous racism, set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives forever. She tried to make one man invisible, and in doing so, she made all 6 of them seen. But this isn't a story about what happened on that plane. This is a story about what happened after they were removed. This is a story about the breaking point, because to understand why this moment happened, to understand the impossible, 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance that put these specific 6 men in that specific cabin at that specific moment, we have to go back 48 hours. We have to understand what was at stake. We have to understand what they had already lost, and what that flight attendant, with her 2-second decision, was about to take from them. This is the story of their separate lives, and the day they converged. Let's start with the man in 1A, Marcus Williams. 42 years old, Marcus was an architect of systems. He was a senior consultant at one of the country's most prestigious management firms. His life was a monument to control. His suits were tailored. His desk was spotless. His mind was a fortress. Marcus believed, for a very long time, that if you were smarter, faster, and more prepared than everyone else, the system would reward you. Merit, he believed, was colorblind. He was promoted to senior consultant when he was 35. His mentor, a white man named Frank, had clapped him on the shoulder and said, "You're on the partnership track now, Marcus. Just a matter of time." That was 7 years ago. In those 7 years, Marcus had brought in over $40 million in new client revenue. He had restructured 3 Fortune 500 companies. He had personally trained half the junior staff in his office. Last year, they promoted 2 other men to partners, David Chen and Robert Patterson. Both were brilliant. Marcus would never diminish that. But David had been at the firm for 4 years. Robert, 5. Marcus had been there for 12. His performance review was a masterclass in coded language. Frank had told him, "Marcus, the board they are so impressed with your numbers." The Omega account? Genius, just genius. Marcus had asked, "So the partnership?" Frank had coughed nervously. "Right. Well, here's the thing. The board feels, and this is just about perception, Marcus, not reality. They feel you sometimes come across as intimidating." "Intimidating," Marcus repeated. "In meetings," Frank continued, "you're very precise. It can make some of the junior partners feel, well, that you're not a team player." Robert, on the other hand, he's seen as authoritative, commanding, Marcus pointed out. "Robert yelled at an intern last week. I was there." Frank had chuckled. "That's just passion, Marcus. Look, all they're saying is, you need to soften your edges. You need to develop your leadership presence outside of just the numbers. Show more ambition." More ambition. Marcus, who hadn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. Marcus, who billed 80-hour weeks. The implication was clear. His quiet precision was intimidating. Robert's loud aggression was passion. His 12 years of work was lacking ambition. They didn't see him as a partner. They saw him as a threat to their comfort. He was a master of a game that was rigged against him. And he was so tired of pretending he didn't know. So 48 hours ago, when he was booking this flight to Phoenix to close another multi-million-dollar deal, he did something he rarely did. He didn't book a coach seat and hope for an upgrade. He used his own money, and he bought a first-class ticket. Seat 1A. It wasn't just a flight. It was an act of defiance. It was his way of claiming the status he had earned, but was consistently denied. He was going to sit in the seat he deserved. He had no idea that this small act of self-worth would be twisted into an act of aggression. Now let's meet the man in 3B, Robert Jenkins. 51 years old, Robert was proof that the American dream was real. He owned Jenkins Auto Parts and Repair, a business he started 25 years ago with nothing but a toolbox and a $1,000 loan. He'd come from nothing, worked his hands to the bone. He'd worked 6, sometimes 7 days a week, sleeping on a cot in the back of his first one-bay garage. He built a reputation for honest work and fair prices. Today, he had 3 locations, 42 employees. His son was at Howard. His daughter was on the honor roll. He had built something real, but Robert had learned a long time ago that success doesn't erase who you are. Your bank account, your nice car, your tailored suit, none of it changes what they see when they look at you. Just last week, he'd gone to the bank, his bank, the one where his business accounts held 7 figures. He was applying for a simple line of credit to expand to a 4th location. The loan officer, a young, condescending man, had looked at his file. "Mr. Jenkins, your numbers here, they're very impressive for this type of business." "This type of business?" Robert had asked. "You mean auto repair?" The officer gave a small, false laugh. "Of course. Now this projection, a 4th location, it's ambitious. Are you sure you're not over-leveraging, growing too fast? We find that, well, businesses like yours often struggle with scaling. Businesses like mine." The officer flipped some papers. "Small, family-run. We just want to make sure you have the administrative skills to manage the cash flow. It's very complicated." Robert had sat there in his $1,000 suit and listened to a 28-year-old kid in a cheap tie explain cash flow to him as if he were a child who just won the lottery, not a man who had successfully managed payroll and inventory for 25 years. He got the loan. Of course he did. The numbers were undeniable, but the humiliation, that stuck. The assumption that he couldn't possibly have earned this, that his success was a fluke, that he was, and always would be, just a grease monkey who got lucky. So this flight was important. He wasn't just going to a conference. He was flying to the National Franchise Convention in Denver, and he wasn't just attending. He was the 10 a.m. keynote speaker. He was Robert Jenkins, founder and CEO, the man who was about to teach a room full of 500 other entrepreneurs how to scale their small businesses into empires. He was flying business class because he was the business, and he was about to deliver the speech of his life. The man in 2C, Major David Reynolds, 38 years old. For 15 years, David had been an officer and a pilot in the United States Air Force. He had flown F-16s. He had done 3 tours. He had seen the curvature of the Earth from 60,000 feet. He had seen things he would never talk about. He had joined the Air Force at 23, a college dropout with no future. The military had saved him. It gave him a purpose, a code, a brotherhood. His uniform, it was more than clothing. It was his identity. It was his shield. He believed that uniform made him different. It meant he was one of the good ones, one of the necessary ones, one of the ones society respected. He was learning how wrong he was. Just 6 months ago, on his own base, he was driving to the commissary. A new military police officer, a white kid, barely 20, pulled him over. "License and registration, sir," the MP said. David replied, "Officer, I'm Major Reynolds. Is there a problem?" The young MP shined a flashlight into the car, even though it was midday. "Just a random check, sir. This is a nice vehicle. Is it yours?" David took a long, slow breath. "It is. It's registered with the base, as am I." The MP continued, "We've had some reports of unauthorized civilians on base. Just need to make sure you belong here." He'd had to show his military ID 3 times before the kid let him go. On his own base, the contradiction, a black man in a luxury car, even with an officer's insignia, it didn't compute for that MP. The uniform didn't matter. The rank didn't matter. He was just a suspicious face in a nice car. But this flight, 48 hours later, this flight was not about a conference. It was not about a deal. At 3:00 a.m. this morning, he'd gotten a call. His aunt's voice was crying on the other end. "David? Oh God, David, it's your dad. He's not going to make it through the day. The doctors, they said to come now. You need to come now." His father, the man who taught him to be strong, the man he hadn't seen in 8 months. He was dying. The Air Force booked him the first available flight out, Seat 2C, business class. It was policy for an officer on emergency leave. He was flying to his father's deathbed. He wore his uniform because he didn't even think about it. It was his armor. He was going into a battle he couldn't win, and it was the only thing he knew. He was in a race against time. He was trying to get to Denver to say goodbye to his father, and every minute, every single minute, mattered. The man in 3A, James Morrison, 35 years old. James taught U.S. history at Lincoln High, an inner-city school where the textbooks were 10 years old and the ceiling tiles were stained with leaks. He could have made twice as much money in the suburbs. He chose this because James was a believer. He believed in the system. He believed in process. He believed in the power of working within the structure to create change. On his classroom wall was a quote from Dr. King. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. He believed that. He taught his students that change happens slowly, that anger is justified, but strategy is more powerful. You have to get to the table. He'd tell them, get the grades, get the degrees, get inside the room, and then you change things. They called him naive, but he held fast until last month's school board meeting. A board member in a cold, bureaucratic voice announced, and so the board votes to table the motion for the African American history curriculum expansion. We just don't have the budget for specialty programs. We will, however, approve the $300,000 for new security, cameras and metal detectors. James had shouted from the audience, "You're cutting books to buy cameras. You're treating my students like prisoners, not pupils." The board member had shot back, "Mr. Morrison, you are out of order. This is about safety, not the special interests." They didn't just deny his program. They called it a special interest. They implied his history. His students' history wasn't American history. He was heartbroken. He was angry. He was, for the first time, losing faith. And then he got an email. He was a finalist for the National Educators Grant, a $100,000 grant, enough to fund his program for 5 years. All he had to do was fly to Denver for the National Education Summit and present his case to the panel. This flight was his last hope. The school district, feeling guilty, had approved the travel, and as a small perk for being a finalist, the summit organizers had upgraded his ticket to business class. He was flying to Denver to save his program. He was flying to prove to his students and to himself that the system could work, that the arc did bend. The man in 4C, Andrew Washington, 19 years old. Andrew was in his second year at a top university, pursuing a degree in civil engineering. But to his family, Andrew wasn't just a student. He was a promise. His mom cleaned hotel rooms. His dad worked in a warehouse. They had sacrificed everything for him. "You go to college," his mom would say. "You build something. You have a choice." That pressure was a physical weight. He didn't just study. He attacked his books. He got a 4.0 in high school, a full-ride scholarship this last semester, a perfect 4.0 in upper-level engineering classes. He was doing it. He was becoming the dream. But the system kept reminding him that he didn't belong. Just 2 days ago, he'd gotten a paper back from his advanced physics professor. The professor, an older academic, had told him, "Andrew, this is an exceptional paper. Truly. The analysis it's graduate level." Andrew had replied, "Thank you, Professor. I worked really hard on it." The professor had paused. "Yes, that's just it. It's so good that the university's plagiarism software flagged it." "What?" Andrew asked, stunned. "The phrasing, the sourcing, it's very sophisticated, and it doesn't quite match your previous work, or frankly, your background." "My background?" Andrew's voice had shaken with rage. "I have a 4.0. You're accusing me of cheating because I did a good job?" The professor had backpedaled, of course. He'd just been checking. But the message was clear. Andrew's excellence was, itself, suspicious. This flight, This flight was his answer to all of it. He wasn't just flying to Denver. He was a national finalist for the prestigious Ainsworth Engineering Scholarship. A full ride for the rest of his degree, plus a guaranteed internship at a top firm. This interview was the final step. It would change his life. It would validate everything his family had sacrificed. He couldn't afford a business class ticket, but his mentor, a black engineer who had graduated from the same program, had bought it for him. You go in there, his mentor had told him, and you arrive like you belong in the room. You walk off that plane as an equal. He was 19 years old. He was wearing his first ever suit. He was flying to an interview that would decide his entire future, and he was terrified. And finally, the man in 4A, Thomas Williams, 31 years old. Thomas was, in almost every way, invisible. He worked as a healthcare aide at Mercy Nursing Home. He made $28,000 a year. He was one of the kindest, gentlest men you could ever meet. When his own mother got sick, he was the one who cared for her, bathed her, fed her, sat with her through the night. It wasn't a job, it was love. When she passed, he took that compassion and gave it to the people who had no one else. The residents loved him, but the administrators, the doctors, the RNs, they looked through him. He was the guy who emptied bedpans. He wasn't educated, he wasn't important, but there was another kind of invisibility, the kind where being quiet and kind and a black man becomes suspicious. Just last night, he'd been on shift. He had quietly approached a doctor. Doctor, Mrs. Petrovic in 212, her breathing is shallow. It's different from yesterday. I think there's fluid. The doctor had been dismissive. Her chart's fine. Tom, she's 88. Her breathing is shallow. Just keep her comfortable. 5 minutes later, a white nurse had rushed to the same doctor. Doctor, I just checked on Petrovic. I don't like her respiration. I think she's fluid positive. The doctor, alarmed, had said, "What? Why didn't anyone say anything?" Good catch, Sarah. Let's get a scan, stat. Thomas had stood there, invisible. His diagnosis dismissed. The exact same diagnosis from a white nurse, praised. He was used to it. He was used to being unseen. But this flight was his chance to be seen. Thomas wasn't just getting a certification. He was flying to the National Palliative Care Summit, and he was a presenter. He had developed a simple, non-verbal communication system using touch and textured cards, allowing him to talk, to stroke patients who hadn't communicated in years. It was revolutionary. It was his work. His tiny, underfunded nursing home had scraped together the money to send him. They'd booked him the cheapest flight they could find, and by a miracle, the airline had given him a free, last-minute upgrade to business class. It was the first time in his life he'd ever turned left on an airplane. He was carrying a poster tube with his presentation. He was going to stand on a stage and for the first time show the doctors and administrators that he was not, in fact, invisible. So, let's go back to Gate 47, Flight 3284 to Denver. 6 men, one by one, they board the plane. Marcus, the consultant, is in 1A. He's rehearsing his client presentation in his head, thinking about the softness he's supposed to have. He's determined to prove them wrong. David, the soldier, is in 2C. He's in his uniform. His phone is in his hand, his thumb hovering over his father's name. He's praying. Just let me get there. Just hold on, Dad. Just hold on. Robert, the businessman, is in 3B. He's looking over the notes for his keynote speech. He's ready to tell his story. He's ready to inspire. James, the teacher, is in 3A. He's clutching his briefcase, which holds the grant proposal that could save his students' futures. Andrew, the student, is in 4C. He's in his new suit, sweating, terrified, and hopeful. He's practicing his answers for the scholarship panel. And Thomas, the caregiver, is in 4A. He's carefully stowing his presentation poster in the overhead, his heart pounding with a feeling he rarely experiences. Pride. 6 men, 6 separate high-stakes missions. 6 lives, balancing on the knife edge of this single flight. They settle into their seats. As they do, they exchange those small, polite nods. The nod of recognition. The one that says, "I see you. Good to see you here." It is a quiet, fractional moment of solidarity, and it is this moment that seals their fate. Because flight attendant Brenda is watching, and she doesn't see 6 individuals. She doesn't see a soldier, a teacher, a CEO. She sees a group. She sees a problem. She sees 6 black men in her business class cabin, and her mind, poisoned by a system that taught her prejudice, flashes one single ugly thought. They don't belong here. She decides to make an example. She decides to find the ringleader. She looks at her manifest, sees Williams in 1A and walks over. She decides to pick a fight. This time, we know the stakes. This isn't a man arguing about a seat. This is a senior consultant who has been denied his worth, finally claiming it. "I am Marcus Williams," he says, "and this is business class." Brenda tells him, "Passengers from economy are not permitted. Go back to your actual seat." Marcus, thinking of 7 years of being told to soften, of being called intimidating. His patience, his accommodation, it breaks. "I am not moving from the seat I paid for. Get your manager." Brenda snaps back. "I don't know how you people managed to get up here, but I will have you removed." "You people," Marcus repeats. And from 2C, David Reynolds hears it. He's not just a soldier. He's a son, racing to his dying father's bedside. And this woman, this nothing of a woman, is delaying his flight over prejudice. "Ma'am," David says, "what did you just say to him?" "I'm Major David Reynolds, United States Air Force." "What did you mean by you people?" And Robert Jenkins hears it. He's not just a passenger. He's a keynote speaker, a CEO. He's a man who just got lectured by a 28-year-old child about businesses like his. "I heard it too," Robert says. "We all did. You just accused this man of not belonging here. What is the actual problem?" And James and Andrew and Thomas, they hear it. James, thinking of his students, being told their history is a special interest. Andrew, thinking of his professor, being told his 4.0 is suspicious. Thomas, thinking of the doctor, being told his diagnosis is irrelevant. And they stand, all of them. They stand up against the casual, vile racism that has dogged every single day of their lives. And Brenda, she sees what she wants to see. Not 6 decent men, but a threatening group. She grabs the intercom. "This is Brenda. I need security. Now, I have a group of men. They're being threatening. I'm being threatened." The cabin door bursts open. The security officers rush in. "What's the problem here?" Brenda points. "Them, all of them. They're refusing to sit down. They're disrupting the flight. They're a threat. You have to get them off. All 6 of them, off this plane." "This is insane," Marcus yells. "I showed her my ticket." "Officer," David starts. "I am a major in the Air Force. This flight attendant is..." The officer cuts him off, his hand on his sidearm. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice. All 6 of you. Grab your bags. You're coming with us. You're making a mistake." Robert protests. "I have a speech in Denver in 3 hours. You can give it to us, off the plane." The officer replies, "Let's go, now." This is the story of a room, a gray, windowless, fluorescent-lit room in the bowels of the airport. This is where they were taken. For 2 hours, they sat. A supervisor, a man named Miller, came in. He took their IDs. He took their statements. Marcus, the consultant, explained the situation with cold, legal precision. David, the soldier, explained his emergency leave. He showed them his father's hospital information. He begged them to understand. Robert, the businessman, explained his keynote speech. James, Andrew, and Thomas explained their own high-stakes missions. Miller just typed. He made phone calls. He sighed. Finally, at 9:45 a.m., he came back in. He flipped his clipboard closed. "All right, this is a mess," Marcus said. "So you're letting us go. Our hands are tied." Miller said, The flight crew has the final say. They felt unsafe. Robert exploded. Felt unsafe? Felt unsafe? She assaulted us. This is discrimination. Miller sighed, not meeting his eyes. Look, the report is filed. There's no crime here, so you're free to go. David stood up, his voice shaking. What about the flight? My father, Miller replied. Flight 3284 departed an hour ago. You'll have to rebook at the main customer service counter. He didn't apologize. He didn't look them in the eye. He opened the door. They were free. They had been detained, questioned, humiliated, and tried in a windowless room. They were found innocent, and they had all been punished. They ended up at the airport hotel bar, a dark room that smelled like stale beer. It was 11:01. 6 men, 6 ruined lives. James, the teacher, got the email first. The grant competition was at 10:30. He'd missed it. The grant and his program were gone. Robert, the businessman, saw his phone light up with 30 missed calls from the convention organizers. His keynote was over. He was a no-show. Andrew, the student, just stared at his phone. His interview was at 11 a.m. He was 1,000 miles away. His scholarship was gone. Thomas, the caregiver, quietly slid his presentation poster under the table. His moment to be seen had vanished, and David, the soldier, his phone rang. He looked at the caller ID, Aunt Mary. He stood up, walked to the corner of the bar, and answered it. He was quiet for a long moment, then a sharp intake of breath. Aunt Mary? What? When? A long, choked pause. Well, no, I was here. Okay, I'm on my way. He walked back to the table. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were shattered. Marcus asked, Major? David, what is it? David's voice was hollow, empty. He's gone. My father. He died 20 minutes ago. I was in that gray room, arguing about a seat, and he died, alone. A profound, heavy silence fell over the table. The breaking point. It was not loud. It was not angry. It was the sound of absolute, total, systemic destruction. Andrew, the 19-year-old, put his head in his hands and began to sob. Not for his scholarship, for David, for all of them. James, the teacher, stared at the wall. The quote from Dr. King echoed in his head. The arc of the moral universe is long. What a lie, he whispered. What a goddamned lie. Robert, the businessman, looked at his hands. The hands that had built an empire from nothing. They were shaking. Thomas, the caregiver, the invisible man, just sat there, tears streaming down his face. And Marcus, the strategist, the man of control, the man who accommodated. He looked at the wreckage of these 5 lives. He looked at his own ruined deal, and something snapped. The accommodation, the softness, the 7 years of waiting, the polite nods. It all burned away. He slammed his fist on the table. The glasses jumped. His voice was not a shout. It was a vow. It was a blade. No. The men looked up, took his past tense. Marcus said, They are taking, the system, that flight attendant, that supervisor. They took your father from you, David. They took your scholarship, Andrew. They took our dignity, and they are going to keep taking from all of us. Until we stop them. Stop them how? Robert asked. Sue them? It's 6 of us against an airline. They'll bury us. Marcus looked around the table. That flight attendant? She didn't see 6 men. She saw a group. She saw a threat. For the first time in my life, I think we should be exactly what they're afraid of. He opened his laptop. They treated us as a collective, so we will be a collective. My name is Marcus Williams. I'm a strategist. And as of this moment, we are no longer 6 strangers. We are a single client, and we are about to become the biggest problem this airline has ever seen. This is not a story with a happy ending. David Reynolds never got to say goodbye to his father. Andrew Washington lost the Ainsworth Scholarship. James Morrison's Black History program was cut. Robert Jenkins's keynote was given by someone else. Thomas Williams's presentation never happened. This is a story about the cost, the real, tangible, human cost of a single, casual moment of prejudice. It is the story of a debt that can never, ever be repaid, but it is also the story of a refusal. They sued. Marcus, the strategist, and Robert, the businessman, funded it. Marcus's legal precision, combined with Robert's righteous, self-made fury, was a potent combination. David, the soldier, gave a deposition about his father. It was so raw, so devastating, that the airline's lawyers, for the first time, stopped shuffling their papers. James, the teacher, spoke about the arc of justice and how this incident had taught him that the arc doesn't bend on its own. It has to be bent. Andrew, the student, became the public face of the lawsuit. The 19-year-old 4.0 kid who just wanted to make his family proud. And Thomas, the caregiver, provided the moral compass. He spoke about dignity and how the system is designed to make certain people invisible until it decides to make them a target. They won. It wasn't just money. They forced the airline to change. New training, new policies, the termination of the flight attendant, Brenda, and the supervisor, Miller. But the real change happened to them. Marcus resigned his partnership. He started his own consulting firm. He now advises Fortune 500 companies on how to build systems that are actually equitable. His first hire was Robert Jenkins as a board advisor. James Morrison went back to his classroom. He took the Dr. King quote down. He replaced it with one from Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. He started a freedom school in his community on weekends, funded by his portion of the settlement. David Reynolds, retired from the Air Force. He now runs a nonprofit that provides legal and mental health support for active duty servicemen of color. Andrew Washington, he changed his major from civil engineering to pre-law. He's at Howard now. He's not going to build bridges. He's going to tear down walls. And Thomas, the invisible man, he went back to the nursing home. But he was no longer invisible. He organized the other aides. He formed a union. He became their voice. He became a leader. The system is built on an assumption. The assumption that we will all stay in our separate lives. That the consultant will never talk to the caregiver. That the soldier will never talk to the student. The system's greatest fear is not our anger. It's our unity. The breaking point is not the moment we are oppressed. It is the moment we look at a stranger, and for the first time, we see ourselves. The story you just heard is a fiction, but it is not a lie. It is happening right now, in airports, in offices, in classrooms, in hospitals. So we want to hear your story. What was your breaking point? What was the moment you realized you were not alone? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story matters, and if this story meant something to you, subscribe and share it. Because silence is accommodation, and accommodation is how the system survives. It's time to stop accommodating. The system didn't break them. They broke the system. But here's what matters. This story is fiction. The pattern? That's real. It happens every single day. In airports, boardrooms, hospitals, and classrooms. So here's my question for you. What was your breaking point? When did you realize the game was rigged? When did you decide to stop accommodating? Drop your story in the comments. Because every story chips away at the lie. Every voice makes it harder for them to pretend it's not happening. Silence is permission. Your story is power. Thanks for watching. Now go use yours.